patients who are in the white, all these patients had allogeneic transplants. They are, much lower risk of problems. And if your chronic GVHD resolves, you actually go down to as if you never had it before. So this really gives weight to the idea that it would be great if we could prevent it, get everybody in those white bars. Or if you were at least in the black bar, let's get you down into the gray bar where you don't have it anymore. And hopefully that will improve quality of life. Okay. So this is a little bit of a morbid slide, but I think the point I wanted to make is that, being a survivor is important. As Ellen mentioned, the farther you get out, the better it is. But certainly those critical years, sort of a couple years afterwards, there still are a lot of risks facing you. We've talked a lot about chronic graft versus host disease, that's that blue bar. But actually recurrent malignancy early after transplant is still a huge problem for our patients. And infection, secondary cancer, and organ failure are also problems that can occur. So what are we doing about that? And I just mentioned in allogeneic, that was allogeneic patients. These are autologous patients. You can see secondary cancers actually cause 25% of the late deaths in patients who had an autologous transplant. So there was an NIH conference that was just held last month here in Washington, D.C., in which they tried to bring together, for the first time, researchers across the world to talk about recurrent malignancy, the sort of problem that no one really talks about that much. They had many presentations about the biology of relapse. They shared information about different trials that are going on, vaccines, cellular infusions, trying to use post-transplant prophylaxis. They also talked about ways to monitor their patients and shared information about how the different centers are doing that. And I think the hope with this conference is that they will begin to exchange information in a better way to try to attack this problem, or if it's going to be a problem, detect it early and come up with more effective therapies so that people don't get a lot of disease and then have to go back into chemotherapy and have donor lymphocytes and have some other problems. So I see this as potentially the NIH Consensus Conference for Chronic GVHD. This could be the recurrent malignancy equivalent of that. I mentioned secondary cancers are unfortunately a problem. Patients are obviously often heavily pretreated before they come into transplant, then they get total body irradiation and other problems. And multiple studies have shown that the risk of secondary cancers, so those are other cancers other than the one you went in to a transplant for, continue to increase with time post-transplant. So 10, 15 years out, the rate is high. Now, in absolute risk, it's not that high. It shouldn't be something that everybody has at the top of their mind, but it is higher than the general population. So what can we do about that? Well, this just shows you some of the cancers that have been shown to be elevated after a transplant. Very high rates of basal cell and squamous cell, but also oral cavity, thyroid. The cumulative incidence of breast cancer is relatively high. And you can see the risk factors. So some of those are transplant-related, total body irradiation, which we are trying to do less of. Some of them you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about your racial background. You can't do anything about your age. But you can see that chronic GVHD is one of the major risk factors for many of these cancers. We're collaborating with someone who's at Vanderbilt right now who actually is going to be looking at the HPV, the human papillomavirus vaccine in post-transplant patients, because it's not normally indicated for them, but at least squamous cell and oral cavity cancer has been associated with that virus, and it's possible that vaccinating our patients in the long term may be beneficial. So that's some of the research that's going on out there. I just wanted to share with you some other research that we did at the Hutch that looked at preventive care and financial stress. Again, getting at this issue that while survivorship is great and it's important to be alive, it can be even better, and what can we do to help it to be even better? So it turns out that ASBMT, so a number of the professional organizations, publish recommendations on the care of survivors. This has been extensively publicized. It's out there on the web. There's a patient friendly version that you could take to your physicians. And we wondered, how much are people doing what those recommendations say? Is there a way to make this better and to help survivors take care of their health? So we did a self-administered annual survey. And actually about 1,800 patients responded. That's 49% of the Hutch survivor population. And you can see the statistics there. The median age at transplant was 45, and the current age was 55. So these people were 8 to 10 years post-transplant. And our question was, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing to maintain their health? Do they know what they're supposed to be doing? Are we reaching out and giving people that information? So actually it wasn't bad. In general testing, it turns out that 89 to 95% of people were actually doing what they were supposed to be doing for cardiovascular testing, which is test your fasting lipids and check your blood pressure. Dental exams, which are also often required, particularly for people who have had radiation, was a 91%. That was pretty good. Thyroid testing wasn't so good. That was only 47%. So that's an area that could be improved. And all these percentages are adjusted for age and gender. What about cancer screening? Well, these people, you think about it, people have had a brush with cancer. You think you'd be worried about the other one. It was high but not perfect. So again, these are adjusted for age and gender. So breast cancer screening was very good, 89 to 92%, but that's still 10% of people who aren't getting what was recommended before they changed the recommendations. Cervical cancer, 85%. We know that cervical cancer is increased in people after a transplant. Colon cancer, not increased after a transplant, but still a major cause of cancer in this country, and people should be screened. And skin cancer, which we know is elevated, only 62 to 65% of people were getting appropriately screened. Turns out that about 24% of our population, and remember, almost everybody is insured. Our insurance rate is like 97% of the people who responded to the survey. Actually, 24% of people told us that they were concerned about cost and that those concerns actually made them not do something they were supposed to do. They didn't fill a prescription. They didn't get a test done that was recommended. They didn't, they didn't go see a doctor when there was a problem. And what were the risk factors for having those concerns? Well, being female, being less than 65, you didn't have Medicare, lower physical functioning, lower mental functioning, and being hospitalized within the last 3 months. So not that this is great news, because I think everybody in the country realizes that this is an issue, but it's affecting survivorship care as well, when we know that people need to have this work done and are at higher risk for some of these things. We also look for predictors of lower adherence, so those folks who had less than 50% compliance with those recommendations. And you can see what they were: autologous transplant survivors, concerns about medical care, non-white race, male gender. Actually, no chronic graft versus host disease was a risk factor for not being adherent. Maybe you were being seen more often and so you got stuff done. And importantly, a self-reported lack of knowledge about what they were supposed to do. So we actually have someone at our institution, Karen Saralia, who's very interested in trying to reach out to survivors and provide them with the information so that they can work with their physicians and actually make sure that the stuff that's recommended in terms of screening for other malignancies, for heart disease, for all those other things that lie in wait once you've survived one cancer, to make sure that those are done appropriately. So what do I see are the future directions in survivorship research? Honestly, I think there's going to be less sort of descriptive research. So we've done a lot of that already. I think we have a pretty good grasp on what a lot of those problems are. I'd like to see clinical trials aimed at better prevention and treatment for recurrent malignancy, for chronic GVHD, and for secondary cancers, the big three that people face after transplant. I think we need better systems to ensure that the current best practices are followed consistently. We sort of have recommendations out there. We need to make sure that people are aware of them and that they're actually, abiding by them. And I think this gets to Myra's work and to other people. I think that better preparation before transplant and support afterwards will definitely help, because it really is a collegial relationship, I hope, between patients and their physicians. And we need to get them the information, but we also need to make sure that we foster that collaborative work, and that the goal is to get the survivor not just cured of their disease, but back to as close as possible to a normal life. So that's the end of my comments. Thank you.